The strike by metal workers is now in its second week. Numsa members across the country downing tools last week, demanding a higher basic salary. They're asking for an increase of between 12 and 15%, but employers are only offering 10 or thereabouts. Some businesses have had to close their doors because they don't have enough staff to operate. Let's give you more insight now as we're joined by top Labour analyst Andrew Levy. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Do you get a sense here that we're in for a protracted strike?
I think there's probably about a 1 in 5 chance it'll settle in the next week to 10 days. If it doesn't, then I think it's going to go 4 to 6 weeks or possibly even longer. It does seem as if strikes are getting longer year by year, so this could be one of those.
Why is that, and what does it say about the current negotiating climate?
Well, the why is difficult, but I think fundamentally it gets down to a lack of economic literacy. Workers do not necessarily understand what is and what isn't feasible by way of an increase insofar as their companies are concerned. And so it takes a long time for them to absolutely realize it can't be done. That's the first thing. The second thing, with regard to the negotiating climate, it's very, very intractable at the moment. And we're seeing, very unfortunately, a great deal of bad faith bargaining. One side comes in very high, refuses to move, and there's this lack of trading and lack of a willingness to concede. So it's very, very adversarial at the moment.
Whose job is it to improve the economic literacy?
I think fundamentally it's something that's got to start in schools, but in the absence of that, just as management tackled normal functional literacy 20 years ago, I think managements have got a role to play here, hopefully in cooperation with shop stewards and their own employees. Not sure that the unions would necessarily agree, because clearly they have a socialist orientation which doesn't necessarily agree there, but nevertheless some basic understanding of how the economy works can only be a good thing, whatever your political point of view.
Is it just, Andrew Levy, about the money? This is what the Labour Minister said earlier today. There are still sticky issues around labour broking, the youth wage subsidy and housing.
In the end, it's going to be about money. I think right now the labour broking, also the wage subsidy, are probably bargaining chips. They're putting a lot of weight in them, so it'll seem to be a concession in the end. This strike is not going to go on and be intractable because of labour brokers.
Who's going to hurt most as a result of this? Is it the big companies like the automakers, for instance, or is it the smaller organisations, particularly on Johannesburg's East Rand, that have not only been hit by threats of intimidation, in fact intimidation, but also with staff simply not being allowed to work?
In general, if one looks at the very threat to the essence of the business, it's the smaller employers who don't have established lines of credit, who don't have a good cash flow, who, if they can't get their money in quickly, can't pay their debtors and so on. So they are the most vulnerable. In terms of who's going to hurt the most, well, frankly, both sides are. But inevitably, these strikes will lead to job losses, business failures, and a lack of confidence.
Listen to Numsa and the difficulties that their constituency faces on a day-to-day basis. In other words, transport, food on the table. It wouldn't appear unreasonable, perhaps, that a double-digit increase is fair.
I think the employers could get there, particularly if it was a 3-year deal and it averaged out. And I think the employers have already indicated that it is a possibility. However, it's not only just a 10% increase, shall we say. That's in the basic. Then there are all the allowances, and I think housing allowance has been a very big issue this year, and as I understand it, there's a demand for a sort of additional 1,000 Rand a month for housing allowance. Now, that's it's a big number. So it's not only about the increase on the basic wage.
Very quickly, Andrew Levy, as we come to the end of this, is it fair to say that AMCU and the platinum strike has changed the playbook in terms of
Yes,
negotiation?
they have. They've set a new target. Everyone's got their eyes on that. Numsa in particular has a lot to prove at the moment, so have the COSATU unions, and undoubtedly the AMCU strike is seen as a victory. And everyone's playing for double digits now, with a real view that they may get it.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Andrew Levy there, Labour analyst from Andrew Levy Employment.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com